in 1990, I had this opportunity to go to Nepal to meet the proverbial old wise man in the cave, and it was like this amazing archetypal mythic journey when I realized what the opportunity was to go meet this old Lama who was the teacher of a colleague, a beloved Lama friend of mine. And I was walking up the path and I realized I have the opportunity to ask a question of the old wise man in the cave. What am I going to ask him?
Welcome back to How We Change the World. I'm your host, Deborah Rowan, and today we have a truly special guest joining us, Cynthia Jurs, whose life and work has been an embodiment of profound spiritual practice and tireless activism. Cynthia is a distinguished Dharma teacher in the Order of Interbeing, where she has walked the path alongside the revered late Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh. In this beautiful testament to their bond, Thich Nhat Hanh himself officiated Cynthia's wedding ceremony to her beloved husband. In 2018, Cynthia's dedication to the earth and her unwavering commitment to global healing were recognized in a deeply meaningful way. She was honored as an honorary Lama in the Tibetan Buddhism in Nepal, and this recognition was a testament to over 3 decades of devoted service spanning continents and cultures, all in service of nurturing our planet. Cynthia's profound insights and experiences are eloquently captured in her book, Summoned by the Earth, which is this just incredibly poignant reflection on her life journey over the last 30-some years, and her teachings and this urgent call to heal our world. You'll learn more about Cynthia in the podcast and also on her website. I'll have the links, but be sure afterwards to go and check out her website and this very rich tapestry of wisdom and teachings that she offers. Hello, Cynthia Jurs, and welcome, so welcome to How We Change the World. I'm so happy to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We were speaking just for a minute before we came on, and I was just telling you that I had so many things get in the way of my being here this week, just one thing after another, and I knew how excited I was to speak with you, how moved I was by your book, and so eager to hear you just take us on the journey that you've been on. And so I just, it was hell or high water. We were going to do this. So I'm very glad that we are. All right. Well, I'm just going to kind of introduce you. You're going to do a better job, especially with some pronunciations of words. But I wanted to say that in 1994, you became a Dharma in the Order of Interbeing.
It's a Dharma teacher, a Dharmacharya is how you say it. Yeah.
A Dharma teacher. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see. So here we go already.
Yeah.
Of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, which many Westerners know Thich Nhat Hanh. We recently lost him. But you were you met him long before I think many people had even heard of him. And in fact, he ended up performing your marriage ceremony for you and your husband, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
That's quite an honor. And I know you're one of the first people actually to visit Plum Village and that's in France, I believe, right?
It's in France. Yes.
His retreat center.
Yeah.
Eager to hear a little bit more about that. And then we're going to jump way ahead to 2018. And here again, I'm going to need you to help me with the pronunciation, but you were made an honorary Lama in the which tradition of Tibetan Buddhism?
Well, it's called the Vajrayana tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. There's 4 lineages, and this was the Nyingma lineage, but I'm just an honorary Lama. I'm not officially like many of them, having gone through everything that you go through, but anyway, maybe I can share a little more about that later.
Well, I very much want you to share a lot about that because it's a great full circle story, I think, about you going back there in
Mm-hmm.
2018 and what happened compared to when you first went, which is what the whole story is about. Well, you've you've led this very rich, very courageous is the word that always comes to mind, in a way that like moves me almost to tears when I think about your courage. And I am not exaggerating one iota. I'm literally right now having to, because you know yourself so well. You were so strong in who you were throughout this book from the very, very beginning. And I'm curious where that came from. But here, I'm going to hold this book up because I really want people to see it. Summoned by the Earth. And then because it's backwards, I'm going to finish reading it this way. Becoming a holy vessel for healing our world.
Yeah. Which
is such a beautiful way to say what I'm always trying to say on this podcast, but do not have it's not a literary, it's just the depth of feeling and understanding that you have, that we are all this vessel, that we change ourselves, we do change the world. Yes. And it sounds a little ego, and I know a lot of people think that this, how we change the world, that we can't even change this world, is a little bit heavy on ego and light on reality. But when you that's why I think your book is such a great contribution to this conversation. We talked about literal things like climate change denial and things like that. We spoke about last week with another guest. Those are very tangible things that everybody can go, you'd think, measure and react to and so forth. But this takes a whole different type of approach, and that's why I am so excited to. I think it empowers us. I think your method and what you bring to this gives us all the ability to say, "Oh yeah, I actually can make a difference." I'm talking a lot now, but I'm going to be very quiet during the show because you have this hour, because you have such a great story to tell that really began 30 years ago. So if you don't mind, let's do a little bit of the chronological from the beginning to tell us your background and how you came on this incredible life that you've been living for many, many years. This journey. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much for, putting us into context here and how we change the world, because actually the times that we're living in do call us to engage in making some pretty deep changes in how we're living our lives, whether it's individually or collectively. So this has been actually a calling to me long before the climate change issue started to really, hit us over the head or whatever. We started seeing the signs a long time ago. And so I grew up in a family that was pretty engaged in local issues. I grew up in the Bay Area in California. And so I was sort of educated around what do I care about and who's doing what and what can we do to help and all of that sort of thing.
Interesting.
And when I met Thich Nhat Hanh in the 1980s, I was so moved by his what he calls engaged Buddhism. So, the practice of meditation and a spiritual practice of transformation and awakening that is, the goal. It needs to take into consideration how we engage with what we love and care about in the world, and to not just kind of sit on our cushion,
visualizing.
There is a place for that,
right?
Because we need to calm our crazy, fearful minds and see things more clearly, and meditation can certainly help that. But we also need to engage our practice in a way that is truly beneficial for others. So that was kind of, I met him in the 80s, and then I had always this very strong interest also in Tibetan Buddhism. And so I was kind of on these parallel paths, although, as you mentioned, I'm a teacher in both traditions now. And then in 1990, I had this opportunity to go to Nepal to meet the proverbial old wise man in the cave, and it was like this amazing archetypal mythic journey when I realized what the opportunity was to go meet this old Lama who was the teacher of a colleague, beloved Lama friend of mine. And I was walking up the path and I realized I have the opportunity to ask a question of the old wise man in the cave. What am I going to ask him?
Yeah. And I just want to, can you just give a little context to the visualize, helping us visualize how you were literally, like, is this climbing very high up in the Himalayas? Or is
yeah, he lived at about, I don't really know, over 13,000 feet up.
So it was a journey just to get there.
Oh yeah. From Kathmandu.
Sounds like a path. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We flew from Kathmandu to a little outpost, called Lukla. And then we walked up a trail. There's no roads in that part of the world at all.
Okay.
You walk up a trail and it takes days and days. This is going into the Everest region. So, highest mountains in the world. And, so I was, walking up the path at this it climbed up to where we eventually got, which was over 13,000 feet. But, it's quite a trek.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's important. Yeah. Because you really wanted to seek something. You were on a path. You were on a literal path and a, metaphorical path.
Metaphorical path. Also, because in Buddhism, we talk about being on the path of the Dharma, the path of the teachings of awakening, liberation. Once you sort of find your way onto whatever spiritual path you're on, then that's one step, one breath.
Right. Right. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very consistent.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that was the situation. And, so what I came to was to ask him, what can I do to bring healing and protection to the earth?
And that was the question that you just decided this as you're walking up the path, correct?
Well, I didn't decide it. It came to me.
Okay.
It wasn't like I was going, okay, what am I going to ask him? But I couldn't really figure it out with my conceptual mind. It was just so big. I didn't know what to do or what to think.
Yeah.
And, also the walking, which is very, strenuous and, kind of takes you into an altered state in a way.
Yeah.
You're just concentrating on getting up there. And, what arose in me was my deep feeling of connection to the earth. And I was suffering at the time. And so I was also realizing kind of how and in what ways the earth is also calling out, suffering and needing attention, needing us to pay attention to how we're living, to be in balance in the world and in relationship to the rhythms and cycles of life on earth. So that was what came to me was all of a sudden it kind of dawned like, what can I do to bring healing and protection to the earth? And when that question arose, I realized, that's my question for the Lama. And I don't know. I think that question had always been in me somehow, but I didn't realize it. And then it dawned, and that's just been the guiding question. So, I guess
go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say it's a very, it speaks so much to who you are as a person. I don't know why, but I keep flashing on that, eat, love, eat, pray, love. And how when she got to meet them, she's like, I think she asked about a boy or about her love life or something, which is what I think a lot of people would do. They get this opportunity. It's like, oh, I get, what can I ask for me? And this was never you. You're like, well, how can I ask for protection for the earth?
No, I felt like, who in the world ever has such an opportunity to literally go and ask a question of the old wise man in the cave?
I know. It's almost funny, but it wasn't funny.
It is. I mean, in retrospect, it's just so amazing. I was aware though that, I was given this opportunity. So I wanted to make the most of it, not just for me, but for all of us, because I felt like, who am I anyway? I want to make
representative.
I was a representative.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So that was where I was coming from, and it was incredible because after living there for a couple of weeks, making relations, getting to know him, I finally had the chance to talk with him. And he, I told him, I said, he said to me, what is it like where you live? And I told him about the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is right across the valley from where I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where the atomic bombs were first made, and where the whole poisoning of radioactive waste that comes off of the production of nuclear weapons and nuclear production is poisoning the land. Joanna Macy, who's one of my great teachers and mentors, had spoken back then about nuclear guardianship and the importance of that for future generations, and was really very concerned about that, because these substances, they affect the web of life for hundreds of thousands of years. Yeah. So, it's like that. And then, of course, all the climate change and everything else that we're dealing with in the world. Mm-hmm. So I explained, and he said, well, even just one person can make a difference in the whole region around where they live. Mm. And he said, and then he looked at me and he said, but you need to get these Earth Treasure Vases, and you need to put them in the ground, and they will do that work. I was like, what's
what the heck is that?
And how does it work? And how can a little clay pot filled with prayers and symbolic offerings for healing and protection, planted in the ground, really affect the kinds of change that we need?
Yeah.
And bring the healing that's called for.
Yeah, it feels more like a wish and a prayer rather than a real thing.
Yeah.
And I just want to interject for a second, because for anyone who may be reading the book, and I would encourage everyone to do that, because, when I first started reading the book, and how you will describe how you ended up taking on this quite substantial task to take them around the world to all sorts of amazing and scary and challenging places. But that was my thought at the time too. It's like, okay, she's really going to give her whole life to doing this thing that may have some symbolic, this one person says. But as you read and you see how it changes people and communities, don't knock it till you tried it, kind of it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So,
well, I didn't know what to think about it, because it was just, way beyond me. And really my rational mind kind of shut down, because it's like, I don't know what, I don't know what to think about this. But the other part of me was kind of going, well, okay, we need to do everything we possibly can. And we need to approach this global healing, from every angle.
Right.
And this is what's coming to me.
Right.
So, okay, well, where can I get some? What do I do? How do I do this? And so I was directed to going to another monastery where the lamas there could make them for us. And we did that. And they said, all right, how many Earth Treasure Vases do you want? And again, my mind kind of went,
order.
Oh my goodness, like 10,000 or
you don't even know where it is, or 5?
Or 5. I didn't know what to say. So I said, well, I don't know, like 25. So I received 30 originally. Later, I received another 40. Some years later, we actually have made another 30, and we're considering making another, sometime in the future. But in any case, these came to me, and they were concerned. The lamas usually would make these and fill them themselves with the medicines and substances and offerings that are going to make the difference according to the Tibetan tradition. And then those are sealed. The little clay pots are sealed and placed in the ground, and as an offering to Mother Earth, really. But the prayers and the substances that are in them are said to bring benefit to the whole area, literally, like he said, And so but because of customs and security and everything like that, we were given the pots empty. And they consecrated them and they blessed them and they mixed a lot of really sacred substances into the clay itself. And then they gave them to us to do whatever we wanted to do with them, to fill them and seal them and take them around the world. And again, like I was kind of overwhelmed. I put them away for about 5 years and just deeply went into my own meditation practice and, trying to kind of prepare myself as a vessel to do this. And then finally, there was forest fires, there was droughts, there was, all the signs and omens were going, hey, wait a minute, you have these, you need to start working with them. So
I just was curious as I was reading when I saw that you waited 5 years, I wondered, was there a part of you that was just kind of saying, I don't know if I'm really ever going to do this? Because where do you begin? You had no instruction. You had no. And then also they're just like back in a closet, weren't they? And you're just like not looking at them. But was it just like a homework assignment that's always nagging at you until you get it done? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I felt this, commitment to the lamas, to the tradition, to the earth, all of that. And so eventually, they came out. They came out of the closet. Yeah. And we started to, work with them. And we began to form this, what I call a mandala of locations around the earth, each one like a node on the mandala where the treasure vases are planted in the ground, like acupuncture needles, in the body of Mother Earth. And we've just been called all over the world, to take them. And originally, kind of it was me doing it. And we had and still do a community, a sangha in the Buddhist terminology, gathering to do this practice together. And now, many other people have come forward to steward these little clay pots themselves. And it's just the most incredible practice, honestly. And really has, I think there was great wisdom in the fact that they invited us to fill them ourselves because they gave them to us empty, but they weren't really empty because they had all this
created from it. Yes.
Yeah. But then each place we went, each culture, each community, each part of the world, we put offerings that were meaningful for for that place. And we left it open for people to make their own offerings from there, so
much more powerful at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what it did, and, it seems like every place that you did go, that's how it became a community project. It seemed like that was the purpose all along. Because if you're going to come from the United States and you're going to go into Liberia and you're going to bring, here's how you fix it, is very different than here's what, what will you do? And it seemed like it created communities of healing everywhere you went. I don't know everywhere, but it seemed like everywhere I read.
Well, yes, exactly. And part of my, sense about how to do this was really not to go in anywhere as if I had any answers or this was the thing, that they would want, because who knows, we had to make relations with communities all over the world and to, develop a sense of connection and then go with this little clay pot like an offering, to the communities, but also to the earth. And just kind of say, we recognize that there's suffering here. There's imbalance here. And this is an offering that comes from the Tibetan tradition, but here, is this something that you tradition. Would like,
this consistent with your beliefs.
Exactly. So one of the places we went, for example, was into the mountains of Colombia, making an offering to the Kogi people, the people who call themselves the elder brothers and sisters, who are sort of guardians at the heart of the world, which is what they call their location. And they're very concerned about the imbalance that the younger brothers and sisters have caused to Mother Earth. And they came out with a warning about this many, many years ago. And so we offered one, and they sat with it for, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 years before they had deliberated enough to know that this was something that they would accept. And then they actually asked for a second one. And
Wow.
It was a beautiful thing. So
it is. And you know what I really noticed too, and I don't know if this is completely 100% the truth, but it feels like the communities you went to tended to be indigenous people that were more open to this idea that the, you know, sort of the Western thought that even we did it also with, say, development, like certain kinds of, we'll go into countries and say, here's how we're gonna fix your water problem, or here's how we're gonna build a bridge, and in the meantime breaking many other things because it wasn't done in conjunction with those local people. So I kept seeing those parallels, thinking about how you're taking it and saying, what is your answer, and not imposing it on someone, but inviting them. But it did seem that it was typically indigenous people who were open to the actual process and the prayers and looking at it in a less tangible Western linear way.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, excuse me, not completely. Did we always focus on the indigenous cultures of the area, because we've been into all kinds of locations, right, where local indigenous peoples are not necessarily always there. But in general, we tried, because it's true that the indigenous cultures still have a connection to the
Earth.
web of life and to Mother Earth and to the living systems and to the whole notion of making offerings and what that's about and how it works, to restore this reciprocity, because we in the colonizer Western white dominant, culture, patriarchal culture, we have taken and taken and taken, and we have abused the earth and women, and we have, just the greed that has resulted in the imbalances that we see and the pollution and all of that stuff. We haven't paid our respects, and we haven't given back in such a way that that balance is maintained. And when you start to make offerings, you begin to understand and have the experience of this responsiveness of nature. It's like when you speak to Gaia, when you offer something back, it's almost as if, the trees kind of light up and the flowers bloom more brightly and the birds start singing, and the water looks sparkling too. And, and you start to hear, thank you. Yeah. Thank you from the ancestors, and from the invisible world. And, we have to start somewhere to restore this balance and harmony. And we can't just keep going like this.
It's an assault. Even the most Western mind, or maybe someone who's not normally open to this way of thinking, even in that sense, they know that if they speak to their plants, that they will respond. I mean, that might be the first line of connection, to say it actually does work. They actually do thank you for giving them water and talking to them talking to them.
Yes,
it's just
as a living being, because they are a living being.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
But in our own defense, for those of us who have been raised this way, we had to unlearn a lot to relearn this, to reconnect. And, when you're talking about where you're taking, I kept thinking, wouldn't it be incredible if you could take it to the White House, and you could take it to the Kremlin, and you could take it to the Knesset, and you could take it to, all the powers of, that are kind of China everywhere,
Yeah.
it's unlikely that it would be accepted as because we're just not there yet. But I think the more that we talk about it and just see that this isn't working, maybe we could try something else.
It's time because we've kind of reached the end of this particular path.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll just share with you that in April on Earth Day, we did plant an Earth Treasure Vase in Washington, D.C.
Oh, did you? Did you?
We didn't take it to, the Congress, but we went to the White House. We went to all the great institutions, and we had the treasure vase with us, and we planted it with a lot of intention. They're not political tools, these little clay pots, but they hold a lot of prayers for the good of all beings. So we felt it was really a good, and have had an intention to take one there for a long time. And we finally did it. And it was so beautiful. We also have one, and have for many, many years, in Israel, in a place called Ein Karam, which is
Ein Karam.
So there's a treasure vase that's buried there. And we recently reactivated it, and we have one going that we will be dedicating in June, in this month, to Palestine. Somehow,
that was one of the questions I was going to say for the end, because I'm like, I'll volunteer to take it.
Let's circle back to that. I'd love to talk with you about it. But
I'm very curious where you will put that, and what you're calling Israel and Palestine. But that's a whole nother show.
Okay.
We won't go down that rabbit hole.
No, but we also, what was I going to say?
But I'm currently.
Anyway, Russia, Ukraine, all of those kinds of places as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is that there is not a place on Earth where it could not even a square meter, square mile that could not benefit from it.
Exactly.
Actually, as you just on that note, before we move on, I know your husband is an acupuncturist as one of his profession, which maybe was helpful in visualizing that, how we put it on the Earth, on the meridians. And, I lost my train of thought about that.
About the spots that we would go and take the treasure vases.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question was more along, because at first, like, do you look for troubled spots, or do you look for people to come to you, or do you literally try to put it along, map it out, and take it to certain? We've
never been able to map it out because it's just too big, you know.
It is a rather large planet.
And then when you start to try to figure it out, you kind of stop the flow of the energy that is where it wants to go, and then it becomes about where I think it should go. And that doesn't actually work so well.
Yeah. It's what we always want to do. It's where the brain wants to go. But that's I love that answer. Okay, well, let's talk about a couple of the places. I mean, you started with Los Alamos, but I don't know if you want to, because you have spoken about that a few times. Are there places that you haven't talked much about? One of the things I told you I wanted to talk about was Liberia, because that was so powerful. People are somewhat familiar with the civil war in Liberia, not completely, but Ebola, and there's so many things that have happened in Liberia that have brought it to the news. But can you talk about what brought you to Liberia in the first place? And when was that? Because it was early on, as early 2000s, wasn't it? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I'm not very good about tracking years.
Yeah. But well, I know they had a civil war that ended maybe in 2008. I'm also not sure. I don't know if that matters so much exactly when it was, but
I think
it
that's
was
about
after
right.
their civil war. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it was. And so I was carrying this practice out. This was starting in kind of the mid 90s, after I had visited the Lama, gotten the practice.
Yeah, we did get off the path of the story a little bit. I apologize for that. Yeah.
No worries. And then finally kind of picking it up, and then it was going out in different directions through me and through others. And at a certain point, I realized, if I want to embrace the whole earth with this practice, I'm going to need to go to Africa. But where in the world would I go?
And you'd never been to Africa before.
Well, I had actually been to South Africa. My husband had worked there, and we have a connection there. But and so, of course, that was a location and is a location. But I really was overwhelmed. Like, oh my goodness, all that is to be found in Africa, and where would this practice do the most good and be welcome and all of that, like the cultural differences between Tibet and Africa are pretty extreme, and how would this be accepted and all those kinds of things.
Right.
And so I would literally like spin the globe and go, where
what
to go.
An assignment. It's just so big.
But then I was invited to come and bring the treasure vase to a ceremony with a group called the Everyday Gandhis that was doing work, peace building work in Liberia after the Civil War ended. And so I went and I met all of these people from Liberia who were just coming out of this terrible Civil War. And they made the most powerful prayers for peace, into this pot and offerings and all of that. And afterwards I realized, okay, I guess I'm going to Liberia. I didn't even know where Liberia was at the time, It's a tiny little country in West Africa in between Ghana and Sierra Leone. And about
English
a year later.
Speaking, right?
It's English speaking. It was
because former slaves.
Officially founded by freed American slaves who went back, who were sent back to Africa and, went to Liberia, landed in Liberia. And, but of course, Liberia was there long before that.
Of course.
And, but it was incorporated as a country kind of following on the Constitution of the United States. So we have a strong connection there.
Yeah.
And, in any case, I was, welcomed into the worst fought area of the war, which is a place in northern Liberia that borders Guinea and Sierra Leone, and Liberia with a river system that flows through, and they were all just terribly traumatized by the war and all that had happened, and that's where we took the treasure vase, and had to it was like we were saying, here's this little pot, that is intended to bring healing to this land. And so they had to consult with the ancestors about whether it could be accepted. And so they created a ceremony, and there was, drumming and singing, and it went on, and the women were dancing and inviting guidance from the ancestors. And I was on the edge of my seat going, well, we don't know how this is going to go, but, we'll see. Anyway, the ancestors, and one particular ancestor did speak through one of the women and said that this was a really good thing and that they should accept it, and that, it would bring goodness. And so they did. And for the ceremony where we gathered to empower this treasure vase, people came from all three countries. Hundreds and hundreds of people came.
Really? Oh,
and put offerings in, from their land and their prayers, and everybody wanted to hold the vase, and everybody wanted to put their, their heart in and everything into it, to just because they needed to maintain peace. So that happened. And then we took it to bury it in the village that particular ancestor had been from. And, when it was buried, the elders said, well, now what? We want to remember these prayers. This was really important to us. And I was like, this is your land, your community. I'm not the one to tell you what to do, but what is it? What would you imagine, to keep these prayers alive? And there was a gentleman there that I had gotten to know who was a former rebel general, and had been in the army. I mean, just a long life of being in the military, who had become a peace builder in the Everyday Gandhis group. And he made the suggestion that a peace hut be built in that village where people could gather. This is a traditional structure. It's a round structure, often with open walls, so it's transparent. People can come to resolve conflict and to do so in a sacred way, in a way that is held within the community, and often held by the elders and all of that. So we raised the money to build one of these structures there where the treasure vase had been buried, and as a place to gather. And we also then raised the money to build to dig a well, because they didn't have, they had to walk a long ways for water. And often in certain times of the year, the water would become very dirty, and it was bringing bad health and, all of that. So we dug a well as well. Yeah. And the Liberians then started to develop a peace building program under the Peace Hut. And then we continued and received funding from others, and also from Plum Village, from Thich Nhat Hanh's community.
Oh, really? They were in support of that? That's beautiful.
And so we've
it's a whole
built
different tradition. Everything's, there's no connection literally, I guess you would say, but that's really nice.
Well, we got scholarships for this one former rebel general to go to Plum Village to learn the practice of mindfulness, and then his colleagues also. And so they were exposed, and through me, because I was also teaching that, the practice of mindfulness. So it got integrated into the peace building program that they developed. Yeah. And then we built probably, I think it's 5 peace huts now all over Liberia in conflict prone regions, so that people could reestablish this old way of resolving conflict and peace building. So that is something that continues, and there's much more I could say about all that has happened.
There's so much. I mean, just that one story, because honestly, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, who was the first female president, who was in a huge part of bringing peace in the first, actually, as women, which is a long story, and anyone who wants to read about it can go deeper here or anywhere else. But it was the women who, after 14 years of conflict, Muslim and Christian women got together and literally, went on strike against their husband. No food, no cleaning, no sex, all these things, until they laid down their arms. So women were really responsible for ending that decimating war. And so but she became, I bring that up because Ellen Sirleaf Johnson became, first of all, she was the first female president of Africa, due to her peace building measures. But also she was very supportive of your efforts, wasn't she? I mean, like the peace huts and so forth.
She, I mean, peripherally, she probably knew a little bit about what we were doing, but when she was, elected president, she brought forward again this peace hut building initiative that really had been destroyed during the war. Like, this is a traditional sort of aspect of Liberian culture that was just blown away and obliterated during the war. And she was smart enough to know that this is something that would be meaningful and helpful for rebuilding. And so she brought it back, and we were riding that wave, because we also recognized and wanted to do that, and so that's part of what happened. But a lot of reconciliation happened under the peace huts, also from atrocities that took place during the war, and not a lot, enough to make a difference. And one of them was
anything is significant when you're talking about the. I mean, I remember when I was writing something about this event quite a few years ago, and discovering that not one student, like, the country had been so decimated by that war, that not one student was applied for college in the year, like I think it was 2 years after the war ended. No one had gone to school. All the parents were killed. And so literally not one person was able to go to college in the entire country. Just to show you so a place very much in need of this healing vessel.
Yeah,
And, you know, of course, people always want to say, well, do you think, and I'm not asking this question, but do you think that your vessels made a difference? But, you know, when you see improvement.
Yeah. I mean, this program was born out of taking the treasure vase there.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of this one gentleman that I was referring to, you know, he asked me to teach him how to meditate. He met Thich Nhat Hanh. He began to transform from a rebel general who commanded troops and, you know, was involved in terrible things, you know. He will never pick up a gun again. He is a committed peace builder. His life has been so transformed, and I've worked with him for over a decade.
Oh,
you know,
really?
in that process. Yes.
Oh,
and
wow.
I've seen him go from who he was to who he is now, and the effect that just his life, right, is having on others, and his commitment to being of benefit and practicing compassion and waking up to living in a new way that is not conditioned by the gun, but is, and the force and the, you know, anger and hatred that governs that kind of activity of war. You know, he is a totally different person.
Yeah.
And so if he can do that as a result of this kind of practice, what gets awakened in him as a holy vessel. And this is kind of where the practice can lead, you know, is like, it's one thing to work with one of these little clay pots and take it around and plant it in the earth, and it's all so beautiful, and it is. But it's another thing to realize as you do that actually, I'm a holy vessel. You're a holy vessel.
That's
We're each
beautiful.
filled with these incredible intentions and prayers and gifts and offerings in our lives, you know, that he is an example of that, you know, that he has transformed to such an extent that he can be an expression of that and have an effect. And you see it going out in his life as you see it going out in your life and everybody else's life, you know, and that's where the ripples go out. And the more we engage with what we love and care about most, which we get in touch with when we pour our hearts into this little pot, you know, then it's like there's a wave of difference being made.
Wow. It's, and the thing is, this is one, we've talked about one story, and I kind of like going deep into one story is really helpful because it gives you the representative, it just shows you what could be happening. But how many, you've gone literally all over the world, as you've already said. You've been in Australia, India, Colombia, the United States,
all over
Israel,
the place. Yeah, exactly. And
30
years
of doing
going on
this, right?
over 30 years.
Over 30.
And for me, and now, of course, there's many other people who are stewarding treasure vases themselves. So we're, you know, like we've got the 1,000 arms going in every direction, and it's kind of incredible. But, you know, Liberia is a story of what happened. It's a very tangible story because of what we've been saying, you know, like the results of taking a treasure vase there have been really visible and tangible. But some places they're less tangible, and yet you know that there's an effect happening, you know, and you can't really predict. And we don't go in thinking, oh, well, you know, this is what we want to see happen here. Of course, we would like to see peace break out in the Middle East, for example. But we don't know how that will happen. So it's like planting a seed, you know, and you water it and you keep it alive and you know, watch what grows. And you know, keep feeding that. You want to feed the spirit of what you want to see in the world, and not get caught in what's wrong and what's bad. And, you know, like,
Thank you.
There.
Yes. That's so important to hold on to the higher energy, because really you just hear it now every day, people talking about everything going wrong. There's a focus now on how bad things have gotten in war, in the environment, and so many. I don't want to give it more energy because I'm one of those guilty parties. It's like, okay, let's fix this, let's fix that, and there comes a time when you're like, we do need to make change. We have to be really careful not to be overwhelmed and just slayed by the negative energy. And that's what I think more your work is about now. I know that I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about what you offer, because I know you're in New Mexico, and I went on your website, and you talked about, there's online, there's a meditation group that I'm very eager to join, and you have retreats, and you have, so if you want to talk just a little bit about what, if we were to come, if someone, I mean, we can keep talking, but I really want to make sure that we have a time to focus on, because I think anyone who hears you speak will be like, okay, more, please. How do I become a vessel? Especially if they're interested in helping the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so there are a number of ways of getting involved. And if you're interested in the Earth Treasure Vase practice, we have a monthly full moon meditation that's open to anyone, totally free. You just have to sign up, and then you'll get the link and the recording if you can't make it. And that happens every month, on or around the full moon. And we go back and forth because of the time zones, morning or evening in the US every other month. So, but the recordings, as we say, are available, and we hear stories of where treasure vases are being taken now.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we support the treasure vases going out with our prayers and offerings on the call. We also, during the meditation, we invoke all the locations that the treasure vases have gone. So you get a sense of the whole global mandala of places. And that's a way of keeping it alive, keeping it in awareness. And it's a beautiful practice that also includes time for people to share at the end. So it's very uplifting, actually, even though there's tremendous suffering and really serious issues going on in the world. What we're focusing on is really strengthening this prayer, this intention for Mother Gaia. That's one of them. Another one is a mindfulness practice that happens twice a month. That is just a simple practice like what I taught the rebel general in Liberia, coming from Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition. I sometimes teach it. It's also currently led by one of my beloved sisters. Her name is Elizabeth Christine, and we do a sitting and a walking meditation and have a Dharma talk and a Dharma discussion of meaning, how are we engaging our practice? And how can we come back to that place of calm, abiding, connecting the breath to the web of life, which of course, allows us to experience our inseparability from Gaia, because we're each a part of this whole beautiful blue-green planet that we call home. So there's that practice. And then there's another practice that I have developed called the Sublime Mother Gaia. And this is a practice that is based around kind of a Tibetan tradition with a visualization and a mantra that we recite that connects us with Gaia. And, forming a personal relationship with this incredible goddess that is Mother Earth, right? And there's, of course, many ways of accessing that connection, just going out your door and finding a tree and putting your back against it and your feet on the ground and, bowing down. I mean, making offerings. There's all these ways. But this is a meditation practice, and I'll be teaching a retreat of this in September in New York. You can find that on the website. And I also teach it often online, and we have a monthly practice group for that. So there's an in-person retreat going on here in June. There's pilgrimages up and coming. They're all listed on the website that is called GaiaMandala.net. And you can also sign up for the newsletter, which we send out once a month, that gives you information about what we're doing and what the focus is for the full moon that month and things like that. So there's also a website for the book, which is called summonedbytheearth.org. And that's where you can go to see about the book and figure out how to order it and everything.
And also we have, a lot of people from Colorado, because I'm from Colorado. And you mentioned earlier that you're going to be speaking in Boulder at a bookstore. Can you just say that a little bit more about that? And I'll have all these links online, of course. For
that would be great. Yeah. Boulder Books on August 21st.
Yeah. So you're going to be talking about the book, and
yes, I'll be reading a little bit from the book and talking about this whole journey and taking some questions and it would be so wonderful to have you there. Yeah,
I think one of the stories that you speak about in the book, or one of the themes, I guess we could say, is that your relationship to Mother Earth, to Gaia, really has strengthened in recent years and kind of challenged some of your connections with your, even with Tibetan Buddhism and earlier things. And that's one of the places where I found you to be so courageous in your writing and in your facing up to the hard parts of your own life where you'd been damaged and harmed, and how Mother Earth physically had your back. I wonder if maybe we can, I don't know if we have time to tell the whole story, but that was so powerful to me when you went back. What was that in 2018 when you went back and met the daughter? Yeah. I just, that I think moved me maybe more than anything because of the reality of it. So look, I'll let you go ahead and tell it, and then we can.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's a big part of my story. Yeah. Because, I mean, I've been deeply involved in the Buddhist path and love the teachings, have learned so much and practiced so deeply, and at the same time, it's a very patriarchal, hierarchical structure that is, can be abusive, especially towards women. And this is true not only in some lineages of Tibetan Buddhism and stuff, but also in every spiritual tradition. And
I was going to say, I don't know if there's one that this is not the case.
No. Yeah. So, it's a kind of way of operating that is very outdated as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. It's like we went down that path, and it's about power. It's about power over. It's about control, and it can be an abuse of power when held in a way that is not respectful of others. So, I encountered that early on, and I felt like also, while I love these teachings, that there was this kind of missing piece around our relationship to the earth, and so I looked towards indigenous cultures for that, because it was still very alive there, and also the feminine, because there is such a patriarchal overlay, with so many of the spiritual traditions and the guru system, which, it has its own beauty, but also its pitfalls. So I was kind of grappling with all of this and coming up against sexual abuse in my own family system and my own life. And, that too is like in every family, on every street corner, in every culture around the planet, and that is also like, time's up, folks. The women of Liberia are a great example of like, we can stop a war. Okay, let's stop this.
You just have to know that you can take that power back. Yeah, you just have to. Yeah,
and stand up. And so the abuse of the earth is very connected to this. It's like you can't separate them. So this is all a thread running through the book as well. And so I was doing a practice, myself, of Tara, who's a beautiful feminine deity in the Tibetan tradition, who she was a real ally, is a real ally, and yet I was kind of hungering for this, this connection to Gaia, like,
to the earth.
How can I form an even deeper relationship through a practice like this? And then one day, the practice I was doing began to evolve actually into a new practice of the sublime Mother Gaia. And a mantra came to me, and I began to have these experiences that I write about in the book. And when I went back to Nepal in 2018, I wanted to go back to the cave where I had met the old Lama who originally gave me this practice, and to take one of the Earth Treasure Vases back there and plant it as a node on this global mandala and, give my gratitude. And so his daughter, who at the time I originally met him, she was about 50. And she had been there in this remote cave since she was 30 years old. So she was already, living there a long time. She was about 80, almost 80 when I met her in 2018, and had lived there all this time, practicing day and night, serving her father before he died, and, dedicating her life. And so she is a very realized, beautiful practitioner. And so we went back to see her, and also to offer the treasure vase there. And I took a small group, and before we went there, we went to the temple where is kind of the temple that holds the lineage that this is all connected to. And while we were there, the Lama named Lama Nawang Siltram Zangpo, who is my great friend, spiritual friend, and teacher who helped with all of this all along the way. He made me a Lama, and it was totally took me by surprise. I was not expecting
it.
Oh yes. It's like never in a million years.
But it was because of your work with the treasure vases, Earth Treasure Vases. Yeah.
It really was. It was like he recognized after 30 years all that I had done.
She's done the work. She walked the talk.
Yes. Yeah. And it was his teacher who was the one in the cave that originally gave me the practice. So, he was really honoring this lineage and this tradition,
So beautiful.
And it was a great blessing and a beautiful thing. But at the same time, I was kind of conflicted because I had formed this relationship with Gaia, and I was beginning to really feel as if the guru system was so problematic. And, like I wasn't really sure how I was going to fit in, even though I love it so much.
Right.
Because I was being called in this other way, to really stand for Mother Earth and all of this. And so anyway, it was... this is all in the book. The story is in the book. But eventually we walked back up that path to the cave, and we were walking back. I was still very conflicted about all of this because I didn't quite know how to hold it all, And it was the last day walking back down the path, and I fell. I fell over the edge of the path, and I was... it was very slippery. It had started to rain. I turned my ankle and I went over. And when I went over, I went, oh my God, I could see out of the corner of my eye. There's nothing stopping me. It was like 2,000 feet down to the bottom of the...
Really? It's just how one would imagine. Like you're in the Himalayas, you're coming down the mountain. Yeah. And you're not a professional mountain climber. I mean, literally... It's just crazy. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. It's just such an amazing story.
So I went over the edge. The chapter in the book is called Head Over Heels. And I was literally tumbling head over heels down the mountain. And I left my body. It was like,
this is it.
That's it. And all of a sudden, I came to this screeching halt on the side of the mountain, and there was nothing stopping me.
There was no ledge. There was
nothing. It was slippery, sort of grassy, side of the mountain. And when I came to, it was like I checked. I was a little bit injured, but nothing, no broken bones, no paralysis. I mean, I was
No death?
no death.
Yeah.
I was alive.
Well, maybe a form of a death, but yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It was a near death experience because I thought it was over.
Yeah.
And then I had to get up to the trail, which was, 50, at least 50, 100 feet up. And I didn't know how I was going to get there because it was so slippery. I was afraid. I sort of tried to stand up, but I was undone, so I would, anyway, I started yelling for help. And
hadn't others seen you go over or not?
I was walking alone, and which I tend to do, but it was a mistake. And so there was a little group behind me. Most of the group was ahead of me, and I didn't know how much time had passed.
Oh my gosh.
So I started yelling for help. Pretty soon this head poked over the edge. It was a Sherpa porter who heard me incredibly, and then he went away. And pretty soon this rope came over with a rock on the end of it, a pretty big rock on the end of it. And it went, and I caught it. Which again was like,
this whole story, none of it would be believable if I didn't believe you. It's just too much, It's crazy.
I caught
it just
the rock.
shows you how much it wasn't you, and it was so orchestrated.
I know.
Continue.
I know. Well, so there I was dangling on this rope like a fish on a line, going, how do I get up there? He came down. I don't know. Again, I don't know how he did it because I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
He came down and pushed me up, and I oriented towards this little teeny tiny outcropping, and I got there, and then I righted myself, and then I got up onto the path.
Sure.
And, thanked him for my life and had to walk another 2 hours to get to where we were going to fly back to Kathmandu. And he went on the other direction and encountered the other people in my party and told them, and they came running. It was maybe 20 minutes after this had all happened. And I mean, they caught up to me about 20 minutes after I was walking down the path by myself. Yeah. Totally shaken, and helped me back. Yeah. And so, but I was puzzled this whole time, and for like a couple weeks later, it wasn't until I got home and I was reliving this over and over again. Yeah. What stopped me? Because the Lama that I was with was saying, well, Tara must have come and saved you, Guru Rinpoche, it's like, oh my goodness. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, but I didn't see them in that moment, and then I'm in this moment where I'm reliving it, and I could feel myself lying there on the spread legged, on the back of this, on my back on the earth. And I realized it was the earth that stopped me. It was the earth who stopped me. And I could feel, it was literally like I could feel these hands almost like grabbing my back going, you are with me. You're not going down that mountain. It was like
so
glue.
Beautiful, really.
And she had my back. And it was, I just got goosebumps even telling you this right now.
I'm literally covered in them, and I'm not exaggerating, because your stories are also like spiritual and tangible at the same time. Your pathways and speak about that just for a minute, because like that's what you decided, is that you fell off the path.
I did. I fell off that path, and I had to like find a new path, basically. Yeah. I knew I had already found it, but I had to claim it, like the women of Liberia, and stand for this connection to the earth in these times. Yeah. Like the earth to me is our greatest teacher right now. Yeah. The earth is the one who is showing us the way. The earth is the one who is calling to us, who is saying, hey, everybody, wake up.
Just for clarity, for people who may not quite understand what happened in terms of your, oh, actually, and for me as well, because you had just become a lama, you were conflicted. I know you'd mentioned somewhere else that you'd gone to see this wise woman this woman who had become so venerable in her own, and so knowledgeable and so wise. You spoke with her, and yet no one else came to see her. She wasn't like the old man who everyone flocked to because she was a woman. Yeah, and that was really, and you had just become a lama in that same tradition, so you were conflicted. You're coming down the path from Tibet, you're in Tibet, and then you fall off, and it's just like how you went up. The whole thing is physical, it's metaphorical, it's spiritual, and it just all is so cohesive in how Mother Earth like literally put her talons and said, "Stop, you're doing my work." So did you then shift? I mean, after you processed all of this, because you still teach the Buddhist way, I believe.
Well,
or
yes.
has it changed into more of a Gaia?
Yes, it has. It has. And it's taken me some years. That was 2018. So here we are in 24.
Yeah.
I had to write my book.
Yeah.
I had to write my book. And that process of writing the book really had put me through a whole reckoning with a lot of this and a coming to the sort of acceptance of what my calling was, what I was summoned to do, and that's what the book is about and what I hope will invite others into. But it's been a long process and it's been a difficult process.
I bet. But
I had to claim for my own integrity, I had to claim what was coming to me, and that has required me to, break from tradition in a way. And I'm trying to do that in a way that is very respectful and very honoring, but yet also
but still do it.
Not go away from that, because I feel very strongly that, we're living in a different time. This is a time when we're being called into this collective awakening. And it was Thich Nhat Hanh, actually, who spoke to it many, many years ago about how he said the next Buddha will be a Sangha. So that means that the next great teacher is going to be the community. It's all of us together. We're in something that is evolving as we speak, because we're realizing on another level how connected we are around this little jewel in space, and so for life to continue, we need to make some changes. In order to make those changes, we have to wake up to the situation and not just keep going down the same old path.
Yeah. And we also, I think, especially in Western societies around the world, need to rethink our individualism, which we have been holding on to, especially in the United States. We are such the rugged individualism, and it has served us in some ways, but it's really time to think as a community.
Exactly.
What it's doing to people in terms of loneliness, and in so many ways. There's so many,
isolated, all of that. And, and the job is big. We can't do it alone.
Right.
We need each other. I need you, Deborah.
Right. And there's comfort in that, isn't there? I mean, there's comfort in thinking
wonderful.
You're not.
It's like, oh boy, I found my tribe. I'm
and it's a big one.
Yeah.
And we need to grow it bigger. All right. I'm so lucky. We're so lucky. I got a message about half an hour ago that my computer, which went kind of funny on me yesterday, it said it was going to shut down about half an hour ago, low battery. It's been doing all these like crazy things in the last 24 hours. Somehow it is still recording. I did not. That's why I wanted to go to your website earlier and make sure that we had people, knew how to reach you. But that story is really a beautiful, beautiful one to draw to a close on. So, wow. Thank you for sharing so many great insights and stories and experiences. You are so courageous. There are so many more stories about your your specific courage. And I'm not saying that to compliment you as much as I am to I think that individuals who can read your stories and how you've had to make some really hard choices to say, I'm going to break away from this and I'm going to break away from that, even though it's very difficult to do, but to hear really the truth of what's being told to you in your heart and to act on that, but in a very beautiful, loving way, but just to stand up for yourself, because it's the very same process we need to do for Mother Earth.
Yes.
And to learn from how you've had to do it, how you've had to be courageous, but you're doing it in a loving, kind way that brings everybody with you who's willing to come with you. There's just some very deep lessons in this book, and I just it's a treasure in itself. So
thank you.
Thank you for living it and writing it.
Thank you. I have tears in my eyes hearing you say that. It's
good.
It means a lot to me.
Well, I look forward to seeing you hopefully in August and meeting you in person in Colorado, and encourage others to show up there as well if they're interested. But definitely buy this book or get it from the library, wherever, borrow it, but get your hands on it, because it's a life-changing one, and not many books really are. So
yeah, thanks. There's also an audiobook, by the way.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even know that. Is there? And do you read it?
I read it, yeah.
Oh, good. I always like that so much better. It's fun.
It was
read.
so fun to do and to read it. Yeah. So it's out. You can get it on Audible and all the other places.
Oh, I'm so, I don't know how I missed that. I just got into reading again, physical books. So,
yeah.
Okay. Cynthia, so many thanks. And we will see each other again.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. All right. Take care.
Okay.
Do take care. Bye-bye.